of the intros. So let's get going. Welcome to Sabas Labs client-side chats. We are going to be talking about leveraging custom applications to drive organizational change here today. It's going to be a panel discussion. We've got some great speakers we'll introduce here in a second. But first, let's walk through a little bit of what client-side chats actually are. So client-side chats provide a platform for Sabas Labs and our clients to showcase the ways in which we've collaborated together so that we can share our industry knowledge and expertise to help others learn about new technologies and the tactics to support those organizations, but really to understand the process and maybe even the pitfalls within implementing those. Ultimately, though, we are really here to try and build a network of like-minded professionals who are looking to make an impact using technology. So here's what you can expect to learn from today. We are going to be walking through the University of North Carolina's custom book importer tool. We're going to use that as a project to give a really good example of what a custom application project can look like, feel like, and ultimately do. We're going to walk through the process of how that application was created. And we're going to be answering questions throughout the panel discussion, as well as your own questions about that development process and how it can be used to drive organizational change and growth, both in this instance, as well as how it could be done for you and any ideas that you have. So a little bit about Sabas Labs. We are a highly skilled team of designers, developers, and consultants that build digital products that create meaningful impact. We're an agency based out of Raleigh, North Carolina, but we're distributed throughout the United States. And let's learn a little bit more about our panelists. I would love to introduce to you the people who are going to be the heroes of today, and hopefully people that you can learn a lot from. So with us today, we have Maurice Farrell. He is the Associate Dean for Information Management and Chief Information Officer at the University of North Carolina's School of Government. And he is joined today by two of our Sabas Labs team members who are on his project and helped him bring it to reality. That first is Maddie Kloss. She is our senior full stack developer here. And then next is Taylor Tice, our senior project manager. Thanks everybody for joining. We're looking forward to learning from you. And if you guys are questioning, who is this guy talking? I'm Mark Hirschberger. I'm the growth director here at Sabas Labs, and I will be emceeing this panel discussion today. So let's go through what the agenda looks like. We are going to start off with a little bit of time set aside to set the foundation for what this project actually was with UNC and the book importer tool. So we'll hand it over to Maurice in here just a second, and he's going to be able to give you some of that context and some of that foundation that you can work off of as we go through the next section, which is going to be a panel discussion. We'll bring all three of these experts in at different points at a time of that project process to help you understand the steps that that you need to take in order to take something from idea all the way to rollout for a custom application project. But we're also going to talk to them and ask questions about the mindset and the mental approach and maybe some of the watch outs within each of those steps so that you have a really good idea of what maybe you need to do moving forward and really trying to use this in your day-to-day after today's call. We will finish off our presentation with an audience Q&A. So we're going to save about the last 10 minutes of today's call, just going through any questions that you might have. So if you have anything that you are really looking to learn about today, go ahead and use Zoom's Q&A feature on this webinar, and you can just post your questions right in there. If you want to do that now, that's great. We're probably going to be hitting on a lot of things that you might be curious about. And if there's anything that we cover that maybe you want a little bit more detail on, you want to dive deeper in on that, throw a question in there. We do have a member of our team who is monitoring both your questions as well as just the overall technical aspect of the webinar. And we will make sure to get to all of those questions at the end. If we've got too long of a list, we will make sure to follow up with each individual as well and make sure we get you those answers. So we will wrap up mostly with those that Q&A section, and then we will finish up with a few additional resources that we can send you off into your day with, and that'll be that. So with that in mind, I'd like to hand it over to Maurice. Maurice, would you be able to just tell us a little bit about, University of North Carolina School of Government, what you guys do there, what your role is? And then I'm sure everybody would really love to hear a little bit more about the book importer tool, right? What led you to needing it, and what it actually does and why you're so excited about it. So I'll hand that over to you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mark. And good morning to everyone. Super excited to be here today to talk a little bit about, obviously, the UNC School of Government, but more importantly, this book importer tool. So I work at the greatest university in all the country, the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. We are the oldest public university in the nation. The School of Government has been in existence since 1931. And our emphasis is really around improving the lives of North Carolinians by providing scholarship, by providing training opportunities, by providing publications. We do over 200 courses a year, and we have an impact of over 12,000 new clients that come to our building each year to receive the training from our robust faculty. We publish anywhere from 50 to 100 publications, that being books, bulletins, blogs, you name it, our faculty do it. And we have a real focus around public service. So that is sort of the mission here at the School of Government, is really about improving government practices, not politics, but actual how does our work happen in our city and counties. So that's what the School of Government does. My role here is I'm the Associate Dean for Information Management and CIO. I currently have the wonderful opportunity to work with teams that include IT, that include publications, that include design, the library, and research. So that is my spectrum as it relates to the roles of responsibility here at the School of Government. And so how do we get to this place where we were talking about this book importer? So as I mentioned, publications is a group that I recently had come under my purview of influence. And one of the things that we started to notice, especially after we're during the pandemic, was this ability to get our books out to our clients. As many of you all have experienced, paper shortages or just shortages in general is a main theme that runs across. So our books were being delayed by a year or more. And so one of the things that we needed to do was figure out how could we get quicker to the market to make sure that our clients had the information that they needed. Money was coming from the federal government. Our faculty were advising on how to spend that money, and we couldn't get that resource out into the hands of our clients quick enough. So we saw a problem on the horizon, and we were trying to figure out how best we could do that. Our previous practice really revolved around, we write the book, we get the book into place, and then we would go through another process to get the actual digital information out there. So it was not a book and website or book and digital going out at the same time. It was always a delay. So most of you probably thinking, well, that sounds normal. You should be able to do that fairly quickly. We just didn't have the expertise, and we didn't have the process to do that. So that was one of the areas that we really started to look at and figure out how could we get to this place quicker. So we came up with, and it's not a great term, book importer. I wish we could have, like the Tar Heel Express or something like that. But we didn't have a cool name other than book importer. Maybe we'll get to that. Maybe someone can put in the chat a better name for this. But we really started to look at how could we really improve the process of getting our print to digital. And so we landed on this book importer. And what's so cool about this is that now we're actually able to take what our faculty does from a print perspective when it goes to our editors. And once it goes through that process, literally we run it through this importer, and now we have magically a website for the book, and we can launch the book and the digital at the same time. I would almost argue that we can launch the digital quicker now than we could the book, but we're trying for marketing purposes to launch them both at the same time. So that's kind of a very high level overview of how we got to where we are today, Mark.
That's awesome. Thank you, Maurice, for some of that foundation. I think that's a really great piece to start with so that everybody has a really good idea of what led us here today to talking about this, because we are going to be using that as an example to zoom in throughout this high level process that we're going to walk through in our panel discussion to give that real world example. So I'd love to step into our actual panel kind of process here today. And I want to walk through that very first step for any custom application process, which is identifying the problem to be solved by technology. Anybody who's run a project successfully from start to finish knows that you have to have a really good idea of what problem you're looking to solve, or else you can lose yourself very quickly moving forward. So Maurice, this obviously is where you started and have a lot of experience. I'd like to just ask you really quick, like, what did identifying the problem look like for you at UNC for this project?
Absolutely, Mark. So one of the things that we really picked up really quickly that we were not getting to market quick enough. So we were losing money for sure. And also our clients, they were not getting the information that they needed in a timely fashion. But when we really start to dig deeper into this, we started to also discover that we had some inefficiencies in how we were launching our products. So, we were spending almost 6 to 8 months in the editorial space. And then we were spending another 6 to 8 months in application development. And by the time we got the information out, it was almost too late. And so we were already working on the supplement. And so, it really was a point of emphasis that, that we could build some efficiencies into this and we could be seen as a thought leader in this space. We were not the only ones on our campus having this issue, but we were the only ones in where the information that goes out is more for a traditional worker, the traditional citizen. A lot of our units on campus are academically focused. We are more practical focused. So the information that we provide or put out by the school is used on a day in, day out basis to help people get work done to improve the lives of North Carolinians. It is not necessarily academic research. So we saw that that was a huge problem and we really needed to tackle it head on.
That's great. Recognizing some of the pain points is a huge thing that leads to that. Maurice, I'm sure there's a lot of people on this call that are curious how they might be able to learn to do that on their side. So a question for you is there anything specific that someone should be looking for to help them spot an organizational problem that could potentially be solved through technology?
Absolutely. So one of the questions that we really had to wrestle with was our business process. And were we really being efficient, and could technology solve that problem? And when we started to really look at our business process, we started to say, technology really could help us in this space, because literally they were already, the book was already built. There was no need to go through the same process on the tech side. So how could we then align all of those tools together? And so we started to look at that. It was not that we were trying to have technology for technology's sake. It wasn't that we were trying to have the shiny new iPhone or the shiny new Apple Watch, but this really built in efficiencies to help us to move our school forward. And it was almost disruptive in the nature of how we were going to handle our business process going forward. So we really looked at our business process, and could a technology tool help us to get to the place that we needed to be?
That's great. I think that's really helpful for anybody who's trying to find that opportunity here as well. I'd like to move forward now into kind of the next phase of a project, right? Which, after you've identified that problem to be solved, what does running a discovery of that problem look like? And really the idea here is, can you have a 360 view of that problem and know it back to front, know every aspect about it, so that you can find the best solution. So Maurice, I'd like to start with you here again as well, and just ask, a pretty simple question. As a business leader, what are the most important questions to answer when you're trying to understand a problem?
Yes. So one of the things that we asked and tried to get answers to were, one, can we build in inefficiencies? I've said that multiple times. Two, will it have a impact on our bottom line? So are we able to get a return on the investment? Three, do we have the right team members? Do we have them in the right places, right? Do we have the expertise in-house, or do we need to go outside? And if we do go outside, are we able to leverage that product into our business model to where we will see the benefits of it? And then lastly, after we get to all of that, get through all of that, how can we then take that tool that we're trying to solve this problem? Can it solve other problems within our organization? And so when we went through this particular process, we discovered that, yes, it could do all of those things for us. And so it made it real easy for us to kind of move into this space.
You said something really interesting, Maurice, about that, which was internal resources, right? And making sure that you had team members connected to it and involved. I'd love to dig in a little bit more there. Was there anywhere within your organization that you went to learn more about the problem and the opportunities? Did you talk to any stakeholders, and what did you learn through maybe that process?
Yeah, so we have an applications team. We have our editors. So obviously we started there and kind of try to figure out how they were handling their processes. And what we really discovered was that we just didn't have the bandwidth to do what we needed to do in this product. So for us to develop a tool to do what Sabas has done for us, it was going to take another year just to develop the tool. And then we were still not sure that the tool was going to give us the results that we needed. And we couldn't wait another year. We couldn't wait. And so we talked to our internal IT team. We talked to our internal editing team. And let me say this, sometimes when you're talking to multiple teams, they don't always see eye to eye on how we're supposed to solve the problem. Right. So there is some politicking, there is some, I would say, persuasion that needs to take place to help us move into the areas that we needed to move into. But the internal stakeholders, our IT team, our editing team, they've been great. They found ways to work together in beforehand, before we went through this importer process that we were not doing. So it has really encouraged more of a joint effort to make sure that our product is meeting the needs of our clients.
That's great to hear, right? And I think that's something that's really important for anybody on this call to understand, is those stakeholders, those initial conversations. It's not just a checkbox that you got to hit, right? Like that is a big part of framing what the problem and what the solution looks like.
Mark, I would almost call it siloed decision making. That if you do siloed decision making, you're going to run into problems as it relates to getting a quality product that needs, it to be not siloed. So we were in siloed decision making, and so we had to bring these groups together, and that's what we were able to do.
That is a great quote right there for anybody listening. Perfect. At this point in time, I would love to bring in some of the Sabas members to this discussion. From a project management perspective, Taylor, you oftentimes are maybe initially reliant on your client to help you fully understand that problem that your team has been hired to solve. So for you, what are the most important things that you always want to know so that you can quickly move into that solution mapping phase with them?
Yeah, great question, Mark. And so for us here at Sabas, a successful discovery is really all about problem solving. We want to come in and understand who the target audience is, who's going to be using this tool that we're creating, then who's going to be the ultimate recipient of that tool, and what are the pain points along the way for that audience. And oftentimes as we get in and are collaborating with our clients in the discovery phase, we often discover that there's multiple problems, or maybe the root of the problem is something deeper than we initially understood, or that our clients understood. So we really, again, all about collaboration in the discovery phase, getting in there to then prioritize the problems that we uncover. That's really the second most important thing in discovery, is figuring out, all right, how are we going to tackle this? What features and functionality are going to be most important to solving this problem? And then from there, once we have those priorities set, we of course always want to factor in budget and timeline, making sure that we can be efficient with our client's budget and work within the time constraints to deliver a valuable solution.
Yeah, so I'm sensing a theme here with collaboration, and that's definitely a big PM move: budget and timeline. Maddie, from a technical perspective, as somebody who's extremely familiar with, the technology solutions that might be implemented and maybe their limitations, what are the things that you focus on to help you wrap your head around the job to be done on the front side of these?
Yeah, thanks, Mark, and good morning, everybody. I think the main thing, again, from a technical perspective, is understanding what the core problem is and then the core functionality that is needed to solve that. So in this case, we needed to translate Word documents into well-formatted and styled HTML for SEO and for other reasons. And so we're trying to understand what is the data that needs to move from one place to another. So what is the kind of metadata from the Word documents that we can obtain, and what is the ultimate format that it needs to get into? And so I would say one of the biggest areas or pitfalls might be not having data in the format that is needed to move from one piece of the puzzle to the other piece of the puzzle. And that would be a good time to get in. If there isn't somebody on your staff who's able to think through that side of things, the data and the content modeling side of things, that's a good time to start to bring in experts who are able to do that.
Yeah. It like you're saying, right? It takes a little bit of a specific type of mind and approach to thinking through some of these technical items. It's really important to have somebody on your team or on your side for that. So we've talked a little bit about that discovery, right? But really the whole goal of that discovery is so that you can build a plan, right, for your solution. And it's not necessarily a plan that is going to be detailed in terms of this is what we're going to do every day, but more so getting buy-in, right? Because oftentimes you're most likely going to need to ask for budget, for direction and approval on some of the things. And you need to make sure that you have a good plan in place that you can share and you can get people bought in and behind. So Maurice, this is obviously something that you are familiar with, having had to go through a little bit of this process within this project, and I'm sure many others. So a question I have for you is, what resources, be that your network, technology forums, or anything else, did you use to help build out what you believe to be the solution for your problem? Essentially, the book importer idea.
Yeah, this is a great question. So after we got beyond the siloed decision making, and we were actually able to bring the IT team, the design team, and the publications team together, realizing that that's just one lens into what the book importer could be. So we had to reach out to our faculty. We had to talk to them about how they were thinking about their writing styles. But more beyond that, we didn't want to create something that our clients didn't want to use. So we did do an extensive study. We did some research with our customer base. We have what I call a captive audience, because they come to the school. And so we would ask faculty, could we have just a little time to talk about, what this tool could look like, what this could mean for them. And so we would create little pilot groups, and that they helped us also through this process. So we look beyond just, what it meant for IT, what it meant for the editing team, because, we always have this saying, my network is perfect until you allow users to get on there. And so we really wanted to make sure that we had a user focus or a client focus to make sure that once it runs through this importer, the tool that we were going to develop was going to be amenable to our client group. And so that's kind of how we reached out and made sure that we were in a good place.
Yeah. So I'm curious, did you have any stakeholders that you had to get, either buy-in or sign off on, and, who were they and what did it look like to get them on board?
Yes, our finance group. They were very important. So, whenever you talk about making an investment of this nature on a tool like this, and it's not quote unquote in the budget, there has to be some strategic conversations around that. So we really literally had conversations about how this could really be disruptive in our ability to deliver products. And we now have the ability to create a marketing plan or have a product plan that will be disruptive in a positive way for the school. And so once we were able to communicate that plan with our finance group and they could see how the ROI, and they have their own budget models that they run through and they say, oh, okay, this will work. And once we were able to get their sign on this, we were good to go. So, but the finance group was really, really a key component to getting this signed off and pushed forward.
I think that is a great reminder for most people on this call, right? Of those three magic letters of ROI. You got to focus on that with the plan. It's not just about the budget you need. I think, Maurice, one final question here that I'm sure a lot of people have is, what advice would you give someone who's looking to successfully map out a technology solution that will both solve their problems, but most importantly, get sign off from their leadership team?
That's another great question. So our leadership team consists of the dean, our finance group, our senior associate dean, and we have marketing, and we also have our advancement group. And so they all come at it from different lenses. So our senior associate dean and dean, obviously they're looking at faculty effectiveness and their ability to get information into the hands of the greater good for the state of North Carolina. So they're looking at it from an efficiency standpoint. They're also looking at it from, does this help increase our ability to impact the state? So when our dean is talking with politicians, when they're talking out, amongst the community, along with advancement, who's going to be willing to invest in the school? And if we're able to say, hey, we've got this great tool, now we're able to meet the needs in a timely fashion, that's all good for them. On the finance side, the business side, does this add to our bottom line? Are we able to make strategic investments in our school because of this tool? From the marketing perspective, can we market the tool? And so we literally had to make sure that we were meeting all of those constituents' needs, that were touching those buttons. We have conversations, we had demonstrations, and once we were able to get those sign offs, it made it a wonderful product to move forward. So, not only leading down, making sure that you have your teams talking, but also leading up or across to make sure that those conversations are not difficult conversations, but they are easy conversations for those individuals to have with their client groups.
Those are some real gems there for people on here. So thank you. Let's move forward now, and let's talk a little bit about what it looks like to find a partner to support execution, right? There's oftentimes a lack of resources internally to be able to actually execute a custom developed application or anything custom developed. And so, Maurice, I'd love to ask you a few questions about your experience finding a partner and to help anybody else, understand that process, but maybe figure out how to approach it best. So, what should someone look for when they're building a list of potential, partners, whether that be agencies or freelancers, to interview for a project like this?
And so some of the things that we look for was, did the potential partner have the staff to handle the requests, right? Did they have the expertise in-house? Are they subcontracting, or do they have it in-house? So, looking to make sure that they could do the work themselves. Do they have great project management on their team? Do they have the ability to do UI, UX? Did they have the ability to work with your teams in a way that they could connect to the problem and bring viable solutions to, we think we understand what the solution should be, but a good partner will push you and say, hey, maybe you ought to think about this, and understanding our business process and understanding how their solution could fit into that process versus trying to make us change our business process to fit their solution. So those were key elements that we looked at to make sure that we could really work and move forward with this with a vendor, or
Yeah,
I
yeah.
like to call them strategic partners.
Definitely, right? And a lot of what you're saying there is very much focused around somebody who is going to partner with you, understand you, and less about, like you said, fitting within their processes. So, Maurice, you obviously spoke to a handful of potential strategic partners, but I'm sure you whittled it down to a much smaller list of people that you receive proposals from. So, what did you find most helpful or important in any of the proposals that you received and reviewed? What were you really looking for there, and what ultimately kind of helped you make a decision?
Yeah, so what really was helpful was when um, the agency didn't come with a automatic solution. It was more or less, let me continue to understand your business process. Let us continue to kind of get into, like, how do you move your process from point A to point D, and let us see where we could fit in to add value. It wasn't necessarily, again, let me give you what we do, but let us look at what you do to see if we could be a fit to that, and not make a promise that you could. And so that was, to me, that was helpful. That helped us to continue to have those conversations. And once we got to the place where, you could see where how the company worked versus how you worked, and there could be some great alignment in the types of things that we were doing, then we could then move forward and say, hey, this is the company for us. And kind of shortcutting through some of that, Sabas did a great job of being able to look at our process, saw the strengths that their company brought to the table, and then leverage those to help us get to the place where we could really get to.
Huh. Well, that's very kind. Thank you, Maurice. Nobody's making him say that, by the way. So, Maurice, I think I'll finish this section off with a similar question I've asked before, which is, to help anybody on this call, what are some red flags that you've learned to spot in agencies or freelancers that, others could learn from you on?
Yes, definitely. Red flag for me is when I hear that we need to change our business process to meet their tool, because that, to me, that's harder for the company, for us to do, is to change our business process to fit a tool. So we need to figure out how to make that work. Secondly is when I hear we're probably going to need to staff up to do this work. So that, if we could staff up, we would staff up to do the work. So when I talk to the company, I really hope they already are staffed and are ready to go. And then the other piece of that, you hear is that I think is a red flag as well. We could do this, but then there's going to take more money to do this, and you don't know what the more money is. Like, there's no cap, basically. And so I feel like those are areas of red flags for me, at least. And so, we try to weed those out early on in the process, and get to a place where we have an actual partner, a team member that is helping us to not only, we'll revamp our business process, but we can't change it like right at the very beginning. And so, once we get into it, we figure out and build the efficiencies to move forward. And so those are red flags for me.
Those are all great, right? Any red flag comes from experience. So experience shared is always great for this call here. Let's move forward now, and let's talk about some of the fun stuff, right? We found a partner, we've got a plan in place, but maybe not a full plan, right? So I'd love to pull Taylor in here, and let's talk about the fun stuff: project management, cementing a project plan. Taylor, how do you approach new projects like these to make sure that you've built out a solid scope for the job to be done and set a realistic timeline for it all?
Yeah, a great question, Mark. So, building a solid timeline comes down on projects like this to prioritization. Oftentimes, the clients have a lot they need or want to accomplish with the solution that they've asked us to build. So at the outset of the project, making sure that there's clear priorities and a shared understanding of what it is we're building and how we're going to build it helps keep everybody focused and working towards a common goal. So typically what we do, again, we'll establish our priorities around key features and functionality that we want the tool to perform. And oftentimes those are tied back to the problems we're trying to solve for our users and our audience. Then typically from there, we'll work around a single feature or functionality during a 2-week sprint or chunk of time. And working in these defined 2-week increments really allows us to make consistent and measurable progress, which again, in the long run is going to position us for success in meeting our overall timeline. And the other thing that this approach really helps us with is avoiding scope creep, which can be a common occurrence on projects like this, where we're trying to develop something new and again, solve lots of problems.
And so scope creep is obviously a big risk that runs in any project that we take on. Taylor, I'm curious, within maybe custom application projects, are there any other risks that you see consistently that people could look to mitigate or avoid in their own projects?
Yeah, I think scope creep really is the biggest and most important one to be paying attention to. And so just to define that quickly, scope creep is when we're adding new features and functionality that were not part of our original scope or requirements on the project. This can come just, well-meaning folks saying, oh, it would be really cool if we added this to the project or the tool that we're building. But obviously when that creeps up in the middle of a project, that has implications on budget, timeline, and overall value on the project. So what we want to do when we have these situations pop up is start asking ourselves some questions. And if you find yourself asking, what is it we're building? Again, that's a prime example of when scope creep can come in. So if you find yourself asking that, look back at that initial set of requirements and features that we laid out at the beginning of the project and say, is it part of this initial set? If not, is it more important than something we may have defined originally? And if so, then we start talking about, what trade-offs need to be made. Do we need to take a feature or functionality off of the requirement list in order to slot this new one in? Do we need to expand the budget? Or do we need to adjust our timeline? Again, there's some give and take there, but really said scope creep is one of the biggest things to look out for, because again, if not managed or caught early enough, it really does impact the overall value of the project.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for sharing, Taylor. I think there's a lot in there that you hit on, right? The preparation is key, because that makes it much easier for you to make decisions in these project plans and execution. So speaking of execution, let's move into the actual fun part of this entire process, right? And that's where we get to bring Maddie in, because she gets to have the most fun out of all of us doing this. So Maddie, how did you approach this book importer project from a technical execution standpoint? Like, what all did you do? Like, let's geek out about that for a second.
Absolutely. Geeking out's my favorite. Yeah, so I was working with a team of developers on this project. And what we did first, before jumping into those 2-week sprints of actually, building the thing, is we conducted a discovery phase that included a proof of concept. And this was, I think, really key to both earning Maurice and his team's trust that we were going to be able to build this, but then also kind of knocking off some of the risks and the unknowns on our side so that we could narrow down a better scope and budget and timeline. So that was a really key portion of our process here. And then moving into those sprints, what we actually built was a Next.js application. So Next.js is a node-based Express plus React full stack JavaScript application service. It allows us to have users upload any number of Word documents through kind of a drag and drop interface. And those Word documents, to kind of connect the dots here, are the chapters of the books that are going to print. And then we created a custom API, which translates that those Word documents and the styles applied in those Word documents to semantic, well-structured HTML and CSS, so that it could be styled digitally and responsive, and all of those things that you need, so that you have something that's usable on the web. It isn't just kind of like a PDF that you have to zoom in on to view or something like that. And let's see, we stored the HTML and any image assets in the AWS S3 bucket, and then allowed the users who are developers on Maurice's team to export the HTML and the associated CSS for the web. Something that I think Maurice's team did that was really smart was give us both here's the book that this scope of work is, that we're doing this specific book and we need to catch all of the different edge cases that we can for this book, but also his team and our team were really on the same page of wanting to make this to be a tool that could be extended for books in the future. And I think that that's probably the key that increased the return on investment from here on out. So that was something that was really, really key, is doing both of those things, having a specific use case and then also extending it for the future.
Yeah, so a couple things I want to pull out there from what you just said, Maddie, is one, there was a lot of technical elements in there that we did for many specific reasons. So we don't obviously have enough time to go into all the details there. We are actually going to be building out a case study and sending that out after this webinar to help people get a little bit more of a deeper dive into the what and the why behind each of those pieces. So if you're interested in learning more, know that that's coming. One of the other things, Maddie, that you said, though, was you were singing the praises of Maurice and his team. So as a developer, what for you made working with Maurice and his team so great? Like, what can future clients learn from the UNC team's approach to this project?
Yeah, absolutely. That is something that we reflect on a lot here. We want more clients like Maurice, and I'm not just saying that because he's on this call with me right now. They were great because they came to us with a clear business problem that they wanted to solve, both now and kind of ideas about how they wanted to extend that solution in the future. But they were really open to our expertise on the best way to get there. And it was a really collaborative process, which is always kind of my favorite types of projects to work on. They also did a really good job of bringing the right stakeholders in the room to make decisions, and were clear about when they needed to do that kind of internally and then get back to us. So there was just really clear lines of communication, and nothing was kind of up in the air of who was going to do what at what time.
That's awesome. Collaboration, preparation, communication, all key. I'm sure you didn't even need a PM to keep you on track, but I'm going to bring one back in with a question here. Taylor, what does it take to keep everyone who's having so much fun, collaborating, getting all this cool stuff together, keeping them on track, on your plan, and avoiding and resolving issues as they pop up?
Yeah, so Maddie teed that up nicely, and recognize that it sounds cliche, but it's cliche because it's true. It's great communication. At Sabas, we meet on a weekly basis internally to assess our progress, troubleshoot issues, and identify any potential blockers that could be on the horizon that could derail our project plan in any way. Then once we have those conversations internally, we're coming to Maurice and his team and having those exact same conversations with him. Again, inviting them in, being good partners, really getting down in the trenches with them to continue problem solving throughout the course of development. And then the other thing I would add to that, in addition to great communication, would be detailed documentation, making sure that tasks internally for us are well documented so that Maddie and our development team know what's expected of them, and then key decisions being documented, and ensuring that there's that level of visibility both internally and externally with the UNC team, so that everybody knows what's being done, where are we at, and nobody on either side or anybody involved in the project is asking themselves, where are we at, what are we doing, how are things going? Again, those lines of communication are always open. Conversations are constantly happening, and we're making good use of documentation on decisions.
Definitely. Every team needs a leader, right? And if it's for nothing else than to make sure that everybody's on the same page, that's a really important part. So you guys might think that we're done at this point, right? We've executed our plan and we've kept it on time and on budget, but there is more to consider, actually. And so that last piece that I want to talk about, and I want to get some input from the team here on, is rolling out your new solution successfully, right? So that it is one, adopted, right, and accepted by the team, but ultimately that it starts to drive the results and the solutions that you had hoped for. So Maurice, What considerations did you make as your book importer project was coming to a close, just to make sure that your organization would understand and adopt it?
Absolutely. So first of all, I would say, I had some unintended consequences that happened. So we, we didn't have siloed decision making anymore. The teams themselves started meeting. I didn't have to force those meetings. They have their own, very similar to what Taylor and Maddie, their teams meet weekly to talk about what's upcoming. And, you would think that was already happened, but again, we were siloed. And so we were doing things in our own little world. So now they have their own joint meetings, which is absolutely fantastic. But for this project, what really helped us to really solidify the deal was we did sort of a soft launch in which we were working with the publications team, our editors, the IT team. So we would run the book through and make sure that it was meeting the specifications that we thought it needed from a technical perspective. But then we will bring in the faculty members in, letting them have an opportunity to see their book both in print and online. And it was fascinating to watch them like, oh my God, where has this been all my life? Kind of things. We brought in, we did like a soft launch with a very important client group. They absolutely loved it. And they also said, where have you been all my life? And so now we have these things in place. And so we're actually launching the first book using this technology on June 15th. We already have orders, which is great. So we're very excited about the book importer, and we need a new name. I still haven't seen anything in the chat yet, but we'll figure that out as we go along.
That is a huge thing for somebody to take away from, right? Is soft launch. Make sure you have soft launch baked into your project plan. It is the most important thing, and I would say it's definitely helped you guys be successful. Taylor, from a PM's perspective, what are some of the key elements for a successful training and rollout for a new piece of custom technology like this importer?
Yeah. So first off, just making sure that you are planning for a training and rollout plan, because even the snazziest, slickest piece of technology, if people don't know how to use it or why, the time and money was invested into it, it can kind of die on the vine, so to speak. So a good training and rollout plan is really, the foundation for that is laid in the planning phase, where you, define your requirements and specifications of what this new custom piece of technology is going to do. And really from there, you take that and can just communicate to stakeholders and users, what the technology does, as well as what it doesn't do. And that's an important piece not to be overlooked. Building upon those kind of specifications and requirements, putting together, step-by-step written documentation for how, in this case, the book or the publication, moves through the importer tool process, and kind of slotting that in, painting the picture for users as to how that fits into the larger business process within the school. Supplementing written documentation with pre-recorded videos is also very helpful. Again, people learn in different ways, so having that as an option we've seen be very beneficial. And then, of course, live real-time training sessions with folks, which as Maurice was talking about, that kind of soft launch, getting in front of folks and give them the time to test it out, put it through its paces, and then just on an ongoing basis, making yourself available for questions and further support down the road.
Definitely. And so one of those things you just talked about, Taylor, was that live training, right? And so obviously a lot of those times training is going to be done by the people who are most familiar with that tool set. And this specific project was no exception. So Maddie, I'm curious, when you're training users on a new technology that you've just built for them, what are some things that, maybe a first-time trainer might not cover that they really should?
I think the thing to remember is that you have been living and breathing this for a bit of time, and you need to take yourself fully out of that mindset in order to be an effective trainer. So it's both thinking about like, how do I start from the very beginning? And also how do I lay the groundwork for the context so that this live training, which might be recorded and watched a year from now, is still kind of relevant and helpful and is still a good artifact for moving forward. I also have to always remind myself to kind of define all of the jargon that I'm throwing out. And making sure that everybody is kind of on the same page. Also, having somebody on your team who's equally familiar with how it was built, who can ask those clarifying questions and help connect the dots is really important as well.
Yeah, all great things, right? Reminding yourself that not everybody is on the same level as you is a great starting point. So everybody, that is our panel discussion today. I want to first off say thank you very much to the panelists here. I think there were a number of great responses and experiences shared. Before we finish off, though, I want to make sure that we give our audience an opportunity to submit any questions that they have. So we've collected a handful already. If you have questions, you'll have some time to type it up really quick. I'd like to start with one that, Maurice, it looks like this one was shot to you throughout. How long did it take you to go from idea to actually kicking off your project? And how did you manage the expectations of your stakeholders during that time?
That's a great question. I think we started back in August of 2021. And but we had some turnover with our team. So in earnest, I think we started about October, November-ish, December-ish, really in earnest. And I remember having a conversation with Taylor. I said, hey, yeah, we really need this like mid-February. And Taylor was like, what? But so I say in earnest, literally, we started in December really with the work. And we were actually able to bring it to fruition in April. So really about a four and a half month, which was really a very aggressive timeline. And kudos to Maddie and team to help us get to that point, and Taylor keeping us on track with everything. So.
Definitely. Okay, great. So I've got another one here. It looks like for Maurice as well. Now that you're through this project, right, or mostly through it, it seems, is there anything that you wish you had done differently throughout the process?
I don't think there's anything I guess we would have done differently. I wish we would have done it sooner. I will put it that way. I think as far as the process went, I thought from a project management perspective, I thought Sabas did a great job. I thought from an internal perspective, I thought we did a great job of communicating internally, and we were able to actually identify the need. And so when we talked to Sabas, it was really about them bringing the skill set and also helping us, make sure that we stayed on task. They did a really good job of that. Taylor did a great job of not letting scope creep come in, because we would always ask, hey, well, can it do this? And Taylor would help us get back and realign us, and really keep us on time, on track, and on budget. So for that perspective, I don't know. I think if we could have done this sooner, it would have been better. As far as being able to see a better return on investment. So I think that would have been. This is one of my favorite projects, actually, especially with a partner. It was really fun. There were not a lot of tense meetings. They were always meetings that were moving us down the road. So it was great.
That's awesome. That's great to hear. I've got one final question here, and I would say let's open this up to the whole panel. Do you have any suggestions for maybe a non-technical project leader who doesn't want to be taken advantage of by an agency or a freelancer who might just be looking to rack up a big bill, creating something that maybe they don't need?
I feel like something that's been helpful on this project and other projects that we've run is doing those post-sprint demos, so everybody can see what we are building, what the progress is, how that is tracking with the time, because then you're not just kind of trusting a freelancer or an agency to go away, take money and spit something out that you think you're aligned on, but actually you're able to be a part of the process of making those decisions along the way.
Major milestones, huh?
I would concur with Maddie. I think the demonstration, so we could actually see the tool, that really helped us to like, oh, okay, so we're moving along in a really good pace. So I think that those milestone demonstrations and those deliverables and meeting those on a timely fashion were really important for us.
Now I would add to that, don't be afraid to ask questions. We talked a lot about today about collaboration and the partnership between our two teams. I know Maurice mentioned, we pushed on his team to think about things in new ways, but his team also pushed back on us and so that push and pull is really what generates the most value in the tool. And keeps everything in check. So don't be afraid to ask questions, whether they be technical or not.
And as we're thinking about scope creep, I think it's honestly helpful for me as a developer to hear the different ways that this might want to be, that the tool might want to be extended in the future. And so having a partner that's able to say, that's not in this initial scope, but here's the way that we're going to build it so this can be done in the future in a less painful way is going to be something that's important, I think.
Definitely. Well, one thing that I really want to highlight that I've learned throughout this process of help putting together this panel and discussing with all of the experts that we've heard from today is that it is extremely important that you have a really good idea of what your problem is and how you're going to approach that problem with the best solution, right? So discovery is something we talked about in our panel discussion. It's something that I think anybody who has an idea in mind or a project that's upcoming that is going to require any sort of custom development, custom applications, they should most certainly go through. Sabas Labs is, in my opinion, an expert in this area of spending the necessary time, asking the right questions, working with the right stakeholders to really uncover what a project needs. So if you have one of those projects in mind or something upcoming, I would push you to reach out. We're more than happy to dig in. We have a number of people who get pulled in to help help discover what really needs to be done. So feel free to reach out to us at info@sabaslabs.com or find us online on our website. We've got sabaslabs.com/discovery session. You can learn a little bit more about what that looks like. That's definitely something that we are more than happy and excited to be able to help anybody in that start of a project. But with that said, we are at the end of our panel discussion here today. I just want to say again, thank you so much for everybody who attended today. Thank you so much to all of our panelists. It was an absolute dream to be able to work with you to learn about this project and to learn a little bit about your process and just gain a bit of that experience and expertise from you. So if anybody has any questions after today, please feel free to reach out. info@sabaslabs.com is our email. We will make sure to get you connected with anybody on the team if you have questions or if you want to learn a little bit more. We will be following up with the recording of this call, as well as with a handful of other resources, a deeper dive on this project in a case study format. So be on the lookout for that. But thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
Thank you.